Hi, welcome back. So earlier we discussed how to get into a contract. We discussed the validity of a contract to make sure that it is ironclad. So today I want to discuss discharge of contracts, how to get out of a contract. I also want to talk about what is novation. I want to talk about what is an EMD, earnest money deposit. I want to talk about time is of the essence. I also want to discuss statutes of limitation. So let's begin. So discharge of contract. So there are a few ways that you can get out of a contract. So of course the first and obvious way to get out of a contract is both parties agreeing. So let's say the buyer places an offer on a particular property, they go through inspections. After going through inspections, they realize that, you know what, it's gonna cost more in repairs than they had anticipated. And then try to negotiate to have the seller to cover some of those repairs, but for whatever reason, the seller said no. So now they want to get back out of the contract, and again, each buyer is given a certain length of time that their deposit is being protected. So the buyer backs out, and the seller has to release each and every penny of the deposit back to the buyer, because again, they're allotted a certain length of time, let's say 20 days, and within those 20 days, they're able to carry out all their inspections before they choose to remove the contingency, the inspection contingency. So that's one way, agreement of parties. Second way is full performance. So you have a scenario where the buyer is happy, they receive the keys, the seller is happy, they receive the funds wired into their bank account. That's full performance. The seller's name drops off as the grantor, and the buyer goes from being the grantee on the title and deed and placed again as now the grantor. They receive the keys, they were on the title, full performance. Another way is impossibility of performance. So earlier we talked about a contract that is void, and we said that a void contract two ways, either an act of God or operation of law. So that's another way that you can get and discharge the contract. And then the fourth way would be, of course, again, operation of law. You're breaking the law. It's not for legal purpose, so you can get out of the contract. So now let's talk about novation. Novation is very important, especially for you future real estate stars. Make sure that you're able to educate your buyer, because especially right now, a lot of times buyers may feel that they can, since they're paying cash, they can really lowball. When I first started my career, I used to always want to work with cash buyers. I mean, not to say that I still don't like to work with cash buyers, but if they are not realistic, right, as far as their offer, then you're not going to close the deal anyway. So here's a scenario where you have a buyer, and let's say the property that they're interested in purchasing is for $2 million. And because your client is paying all cash, they wanted to submit 1.5, so $500,000 difference. And the seller says, okay, you know what, it's a lowball offer, but I will still respond. Now remember, a seller does not have to counter back. They're not obligated to respond back. The seller could just stay quiet and not even respond back to the offer. But let's just say for this example that the seller chooses to respond back. They respond back at 1.9, right? So they went down 100,000. Your client is like, okay, great. They're serious, they're ready to play ball. So your client goes from 1.5 to 1.6. So basically the buyer is only going up as they see the seller. They're matching the seller as far as their reduction. So we're still off though, right? Because the seller offered 1.9, your client offered 1.6, so there's still a $300,000 difference. So anyway, your client offers the 1.6 and they don't hear nothing back. Because remember, I said that the seller is not obligated to respond, to counter back. So they don't hear anything, and then the buyer's agent calls up the seller's agent and say, hey, did you get my offer for 1.6? And the seller's agent says, yeah, we got your offer for 1.6. And they're like, oh, well, how come I didn't get a counter back? Why didn't the seller counter me back? And then the seller's agent said, well, the seller didn't want a counter back. And the buyer's agent says, well, my client is really interested in the property. So if they can counter us back, that would be great. And the seller's agent is like, no, we're not going to counter you back. The last offer is at 1.9. We did receive your 1.6, but that's the reason why we didn't respond. So the buyer really wants the property, but they were trying to play ball and try to see how low they can get the property, right? You can't blame them. So the buyer says, okay, let's just give them the 1.9. The buyer agent calls the seller's agent. The seller agent says, oh, well, when we issue you the 1.9, you counter back at the 1.6. So that is what is called novation. You're substituting the original offer for another offer. So in other words, anytime the seller is responding back with an offer and the buyer, even if it's a dollar difference, anything other than saying, yes, we agree to your offer, that is novation, or AKA a counter offer, which means that you've eliminated the original offer. So that 1.9 is not on the table no more. Why? Because your client chose to submit 1.6. So now, if the seller wants to move on with someone else, or maybe not deal with you no more, it's their prerogative, unfortunately. So now you have a situation where the buyer really wants the property, but then for whatever reason can't get the property because of the fact that they didn't accept the 1.9 and the seller wants to move on to another buyer. So you have to educate your clients when they want to do a lowball offer. You have to let them know that the seller is not obligated to respond. And a lot of times agents get frustrated when us as the seller's agent don't respond back to say, yeah, that we received your offer. I've gotten a lot of phone calls from angry agents on, especially bank owned or foreclosure, where you're receiving multiple offers. For the most part, we're just focusing on the top tier offers. And I'll be the first one to admit that no, we don't respond back to all the offers. Partially because we feel like the offers really weren't that serious to begin with. And again, I apologize to all those agents out there that submit offers and they don't hear anything back. I know it's frustrating. I had a scenario where I had a Bank of America property and I told the agent, I said, look, this is Bank of America's final offer. I told the buyer's agent, I said, hey, please do not submit anything that's $1 below what Bank of America is asking. They're telling me to tell you that this is their final offer. What does the buyer agent do? She submits an offer for $5,000 less. $5,000 less, right? I guess she was trying to impress her clients, or maybe the clients were not listening. And what did Bank of America do? Just what they said they would do. They pulled the property, meaning they took it off the market, right? Just to make sure that that client could not purchase it. And that buyer's agent called me upset, and I told her, I said, look, my name is not Bank of America, and this agent did not understand Novation or did not know how to explain it to their client. Again, this is for foreclosure. I don't have the final say. Just like if I'm representing the seller has the final say. Remember, we as agents, we're just advisors. But at the end of the day, it's your buyer that's going to decide how much they feel comfortable submitting an offer for. It's your seller that is going to make the decision as to how much they feel comfortable putting their property on the market for, and the offers that are coming in, how much they feel comfortable accepting. All we are advisors. That's all we can do. So this agent, was upset. Even her client started to call me, right? And they were really upset. I think I heard the wife in the background crying, right? And again, novation. So you have to educate your buyers. And then another thing too that you have to consider, right? You're not the only buyer. So you probably want to advise your client that yes, you're paying cash, but a lot of times I have to let my cash clients know that you're not the only one that has cash, right? So you submit an offer, it all depends on how bad you want it, right? And I know that some investors have certain thresholds as far as they can go, and if they lose it, it's no big deal because it doesn't meet their numbers, and that's fine. But we as real estate professionals have to educate our clients about novation, all right? Or AKA counteroffer. So anytime you don't say yes, you're submitting a counteroffer. So now let's talk about statute of limitations. So you've heard me make reference to this throughout the previous videos. For the state of New York, the statute of limitation is 6 years. So in written format, again, not oral contracts or verbal contracts, it has to be a written contract. The buyer has 6 years to sue. You've already deposited that check, you've already spent that commission check. 5 years later, you may not even remember the client, right? Especially if you're busy working with multiple clients, right? So you want to make a point to make sure that you're keeping great notes, great documentation. Don't depend on your broker to keep all the documents for you. What if you leave that broker to go to another company? So we only have to make sure that we're holding on to documents for the state, but not for you as the agent. All we have to do is just release your license. Once we release your license, that's it. So make sure that you're making copies. Just scan it to your email. And then most email providers give you a free amount of storage. So I have documents from 2007. So if I have a client call me and say, hey, do you remember me? Probably don't. Do you remember the property you sold me? Of course I don't, right? But I'm not gonna tell them now. I'm gonna say, yes, I remember you, and I remember all I need is, what type of property you're looking for. And of course, they're probably gonna mention the address, right? Do you remember you sold me this property on Park Avenue, East 35th Park Avenue? Yeah, so now I can go to my email, I can look up the address. Once I look up the address, because that's how I label all of my transactions in my email. And now I have the client's name, if they were married, the property I sold them, what type of property, and so forth. So you want to start getting in a habit of keeping your own records. And EMD. So EMD, earnest money deposit. We typically call this a good faith deposit, but I don't want to confuse you for the exam. So earnest money deposit is going to be consider it to be the amount that's going to be reduced from the overall price. So let's say you're purchasing a condo or co-op and you're putting 20% down. When you submit your offer, you're gonna submit a good faith, they call it an earnest money deposit, to show how serious you are about purchasing. And a lot of times, a lot of agents don't know, but it's not necessarily that a buyer who won the bid submitted the highest offer. A lot of time, it's the buyer that submitted the highest deposit, because that money is coming directly out of their bank account. So I always tell my clients, everybody else is probably gonna submit, 10, 12, 15%. Once you do something higher, right, which is gonna show that you're that much more serious, because at the end of the day, if I am advising my seller, I'm gonna tell my seller, yes, this individual gave you a much higher offer, a full price offer, but this one gave you a huge deposit that they're willing to let go of. So our job is to make sure that deal closes. So we want to make sure that we focus on the client that we believe is not going to back out, right? Not going to renege on the transaction. Because now we got to start all over again. When we put the property back on the market, nobody's going to believe that something's not wrong with the property. So we want to try to avoid all of that by making sure that we advise our seller to choose the right buyer. The last thing I want to talk about is time is of the essence. Now, this has to deal with the closing date, right? Because again, thank you for being interested in the property, But the seller wants to move on, right? They want to just focus on packing their boxes and then knowing that, okay, this transaction is going to close 30 days, 40 days, 45 days, and then they're going to receive this wire. So time is of the essence. And typically most contracts across the country, not just New York, you're going to have a per diem, right? So each day that you're late, it could cost your client $200, $250, $350 per day that they're late, right? So this is where if they're not paying all cash and you have a mortgage that's going to pay for the property, this is where that mortgage representative and them doing their job comes in, right? Where you need to make sure you as the buyer agent is managing them, right? You need to make sure that you're on them. What documentation do you need? How long do you think it's gonna take? Did you get the appraisal? Like, you have to be on them because you wanna make sure that you're not costing your client the $200, $300, $400 per day, per diem, right? And again, all of that is gonna be in the contract that you sign, all right? So again, if you guys have any questions, anything you felt like I left out or anything that you need more clarification on, please leave it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next training.
Again for coming to our channel. We look forward to continuing to help you and guide you through your real estate book. We are currently doing a New York real estate sales book, but later on we will follow with California sales book, Florida sales book, as well as New Jersey sales book. So look forward to those videos. One of the other things that we want to also discuss in the channel is investment, because most real estate professionals out there, they never get to learn about investment at their firm. So we want to talk about foreclosures, what type of properties you should buy. So don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video so that you'll be notified when we drop those videos. We're trying to drop at least a minimum of 3 videos per week, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you.